A strange glow moved across the high mountains of Vorinth, a world ruled by giant dragons. Every dragon in the sky paused when they saw the small object falling through the clouds. It wasn't a star. It wasn't a meteor. It was too slow, too controlled, and too bright to be anything normal. Dragons whispered among themselves, unsure if it was dangerous or useless. No creature in their minds could survive falling into their territory. But someone did. Far below, deep in the snowy cliffs, the small crash left a trail of smoke. After a moment of stillness, a human stepped out of the broken pod. His name was Rylan. He brushed dust from his jacket and looked at the mountains like he had just entered a giant's home. The cold wind hit his face, but he didn't show fear. He understood one thing very clearly. He had landed in a place where humans were not welcome. Dragons were known everywhere as strong, proud, and impossible to approach. The stories said they disliked humans because humans looked weak and small compared to their giant bodies. But Rylan was not a soldier or a fighter. He was a mechanic, someone who fixed things. He believed that everything, even fear, could be repaired if someone tried hard enough. He walked slowly toward the higher cliffs. He didn't know that dozens of dragon eyes were watching from the shadows, unsure of what this tiny creature wanted. Some dragons whispered that he was foolish for entering their realm. Others wondered if he was a threat, even though he looked harmless. Above them all watched the queen of the giant dragons, Seraphira. She stood on a tall cliff, her silver wings spread wide against the wind. She was powerful, beautiful, and far larger than any dragon around her. When she saw Rylan standing alone in the snow, she narrowed her eyes with curiosity more than anger. Dragons feared humans only because they thought humans were unpredictable. But this one? He looked strangely calm. Seraphira flew down, her wings sending waves of snow in every direction. Rylan didn't run. He simply pulled his hands from his pockets and looked up at her like she was something wonderful rather than terrifying. The queen stared at him for a long moment. She expected him to shake, to fall, to beg for mercy. But nothing happened. He just smiled and said, "Hello. I think I'm lost." The dragons watching from above blinked in confusion. They had never seen a human speak to the queen in such a simple, honest way. They expected crying, shouting, or fear. But Rylan acted like he was greeting a neighbor. Seraphira lowered her head to examine him more closely. Her warm breath moved the snow beneath his boots. She spoke in a deep, echoing voice. "Human, do you know where you stand?" Rylan nodded. "Yes. Your world. Your mountains. Your territory. I didn't plan to fall here, but here I am." His answer surprised her. Instead of excuses or fear, he was honest. That was unusual for humans. Most dragons believed humans were always trying to hide something. Seraphira lifted her head and laughed softly, a sound like thunder rolling across the mountains. "So you enter my realm without fear," she said. "Are all humans blind to danger? Or are you simply not thinking clearly?" Rylan shrugged. "Maybe both. But I'm not here to cause problems. I just need help fixing my ship, or at least finding a way to survive." Her eyes flashed with interest. Mechanics were rare among humans, and dragons valued technology even though they didn't fully understand it. Most dragons, even the smartest ones, struggled with small machines. Their claws were too large and their patience too short. From the cliffs above, dragons murmured. Some whispered that he should be thrown out. Others said he should be questioned. A few suggested he should be ignored. But Seraphira had her own ideas. She spread her wings again and said, "Follow me." Her voice was calm, not commanding. She didn't fear him and she didn't consider him equal, but something about him stood out. She wanted to know why he wasn't afraid. Rylan nodded and began climbing the path behind her. His steps were slow but steady. The dragons lining the cliffs watched him with wide eyes. No human had ever walked so freely in their kingdom. When he reached the higher plateau, he saw huge stone structures built along the cliffs. They looked like temples, nests, and giant workshops all at once. Metal platforms floated in the air with glowing runes, powered by ancient energy. Rylan looked around with amazement. "These are incredible," he said softly. A young dragon beside him snorted. "You think so? They are old and broken. Most of them do not work anymore." Rylan stepped closer to one of the metal platforms. He ran his fingers across its base and found a loose panel. He adjusted it, tapped a few metal pieces, and suddenly the platform lit up with a bright blue glow. Every dragon around him jumped in shock. Seraphira turned slowly, her eyes widening as the ancient platform rose smoothly into the air for the first time in decades. Rylan didn't act proud. He didn't even act surprised. He simply said, "It just needed a connection reset." Easy fix. The queen stared at him with a mix of disbelief and curiosity. To a dragon, fixing an ancient device was nearly impossible. But this human did it without fear, hesitation, or magic. The dragons who had been whispering before now whispered something new. Maybe humans are not so useless. Maybe they have skills we don't. Maybe this one is different. Seraphira's voice broke the silence. Human, what did you say your name is? Rylan, he answered. Then listen carefully, Rylan, she said. You are no longer just a visitor. You are a curiosity, one I wish to observe. Rylan smiled again, calm and steady. As long as no one eats me, I'm happy to help. The queen laughed, her voice echoing through the mountains. For the first time in many years, she felt interest in something unexpected. A human with courage, kindness, and a strange talent that dragons had long forgotten. And Rylan, the small mechanic from a distant world, took his first steps into a realm where no human had ever been welcomed before. The dragons didn't know it yet, but the moment he fixed that platform, the future of their kingdom had already started to change. The days following Rylan's arrival passed quietly, but the dragons of Vorinth were anything but calm. Everywhere he walked, giant heads peeked from caves or cliffs, trying to catch a glimpse of the small human who had repaired ancient dragon technology with nothing more than his hands and confidence. Some dragons whispered that he was dangerous. Others said he must be hiding magic. But many were simply confused, wondering how someone so small could make such a big difference. Rylan did not notice their confusion. He woke each morning in a warm stone chamber that Seraphira had assigned him. The room was enormous compared to his size, but he didn't complain. He spent his days exploring the Dragon City, studying the floating platforms, broken generators, and old communication towers that had stopped working generations ago. He was excited, curious, and careful in his actions. What he didn't know was that the queen was watching him almost every moment. Seraphira, ruler of the giant dragons, often found herself standing on high ledges, quietly observing the human she had brought into her kingdom. At first, she had followed him out of curiosity. The idea of a human fixing their old devices seemed ridiculous. But now she watched him because something inside her kept pulling her attention toward him. Rylan was different from anything she expected. He didn't show fear, didn't make loud demands, and didn't try to act strong. He simply worked with calm focus, his eyes full of careful thought. When dragons approached him, he greeted them like neighbors, not monsters. When they teased him, he smiled. When they tested him, he didn't get angry. He moved through their world with respect but without fear. One morning, Seraphira decided to approach him directly. She found him standing at the base of a massive sky anchor, a device the dragons once used to stabilize storms. It had been dead for almost a century. He was humming softly as he opened a metal panel and began checking the wires. Seraphira landed behind him with a strong gust of wind. Snow swirled in circles around her claws. Rylan turned and gave her a small wave. "Good morning, Your Majesty," he said with a smile. "I think this machine just needs new grounding. I can try something." Seraphira lowered herself slightly, her huge wings folding neatly behind her. "You speak to me as if we are equals," she said softly. Rylan shrugged. "Should I not?" No dragon in history had spoken to the queen so simply. But instead of being offended, Seraphira felt something warm, an emotion she had not felt in a long time. "Most creatures fear me," she said. Rylan laughed lightly. "Well, I guess I'm not very good at fear." Seraphira stared at him for a long moment. His smile was small but genuine. His calmness was confusing in a world of giant beasts and dangerous magic. She moved closer. "Human, why do you help us? You owe us nothing." Rylan tightened a bolt on the panel. "You didn't treat me like an enemy. You gave me a place to stay. I like fixing things. It feels right to help." It was an ordinary answer, but it struck her deeply. Dragons respected strength, power, and status. But Rylan respected kindness, fairness, and collaboration. His reasons were simple, but they were also honest. That honesty began to grow inside her like a quiet flame. Over the next week, Rylan fixed 5 floating platforms, restored power to 3 storm anchors, and even repaired a broken heating system for a cluster of young dragons. Each time he finished a job, the dragons watching would gasp and whisper, "No dragon could fix that. How does he see things we cannot? Why does the queen care so much about him?" The whispers grew deeper when Seraphira began visiting him every evening. Some dragons said she only wanted to learn his skills. Others claimed she was studying him for safety. But no one expected the truth. She simply enjoyed his company. When she visited, they talked. Sometimes they discussed world maps, sometimes technology, and sometimes nothing important at all. Rylan would tell her jokes or small stories from his home world, and Seraphira would listen with a soft expression, something her kingdom had never seen before. One evening, Rylan was repairing a small device that produced gentle, glowing light. Seraphira sat nearby, watching his hands move quickly over the wires. "How do humans learn such things?" she asked. Rylan smiled. "We learn because we have to. Humans don't have claws or wings or breath of fire. So we make tools, machines, and ideas. It keeps us alive." Seraphira nodded slowly. "Humans survive through creation. Dragons survive through strength." She paused. "You are very different from us." "Different," Rylan said softly, "but not incompatible." She stiffened at the word. "Incompatible?" Rylan laughed. "I mean, humans and dragons can understand each other. We can work together. We just need patience." The queen stared at him for a long moment, her silver eyes reflecting the soft glow of the machine. She had never heard a creature describe dragons as partners before. Most spoke of dragons with fear or awe. But Rylan spoke of them with respect mixed with gentle humor. And that touched something deep inside her. The next morning, Seraphira called a meeting of her royal council. The dragons gathered on the high balcony of the Sky Hall, wondering what urgent matter she wished to discuss. They expected news of storms or foreign threats. But the queen stood before them with calm confidence and announced something entirely unexpected. "I have made a choice," she said. "Rylan, the human, will stay in our kingdom as my honored companion and advisor." The council roared in shock. "A human? Impossible. He is too small. He is too weak." Seraphira lifted one wing and silenced them. "He is brave," she said. "He is clever. And he has saved our kingdom's ancient systems. He has earned our respect." The dragons stared at her, unable to believe what they were hearing. Never in history had a dragon queen chosen a human for such a place of honor. Rylan, who had not expected to be part of the meeting, stood quietly behind her. He looked confused, surprised, and deeply embarrassed by all the attention. But Seraphira stepped closer to him, her voice soft but strong. "I choose him," she said simply. "Not because of power, but because of heart." The council fell silent. No one dared challenge the queen. And in that moment, the entire kingdom understood something important. This human was no longer a visitor. He was becoming part of the queen's life. A choice none of them expected. And one that would soon change their world forever. Soft morning light washed over the high mountains of Vorinth as Rylan stepped out of the queen's great hall. The air was cool and clouds drifted between the cliffs like slow, quiet rivers. He had lived among the dragons for some time now, long enough to learn their routines, their moods, and their strange mix of pride and curiosity. But he had also learned something even more surprising. The queen herself seemed to be watching him more closely than anyone else. Seraphira, the great dragon queen, always appeared calm and powerful. She ruled with wisdom, led with dignity, and spoke with a voice that echoed through stone. Yet recently she visited Rylan more often than her council liked. Sometimes she came to ask questions about humans. Sometimes she came to watch him repair machines. And sometimes she came without any clear reason at all. The dragons noticed. They whispered from the shadows, hiding behind wide wings. "The queen speaks to him too much. She looks for him every morning. She is curious in a strange way." But they did not dare challenge her. They only whispered because they sensed something unusual growing, a connection they could not understand. Rylan felt it too, though he didn't say it out loud. Every time Seraphira walked near, the ground shifted slightly under her huge steps, but the feeling he got was not fear. It was calm. Safe. Familiar. She asked him questions no dragon had ever cared to ask a human. Do humans dream? Why do humans fix things instead of replacing them? Why do humans smile even when they fail? Rylan answered honestly, and every honest answer made the queen look at him with deeper interest. One afternoon, while Rylan was repairing a small energy conduit near the cliff edge, the queen landed behind him, stirring the dust with her wings. He didn't even jump anymore. He just glanced over his shoulder. "Another question?" he asked with a small smile. Seraphira looked away for a moment as if unsure. It was unusual for her. She was never unsure. Not a question. A thought. What kind of thought? That you should not be working alone on this high cliff. She slowly lowered her body to the ground and curled her tail near him, creating a safe barrier so he wouldn't slip. "You are small. One wrong step and you will fall." He tossed her a glance and replied, "You think I'm fragile. You are fragile, she said simply. But you are brave. Then she hesitated. It is not a bad combination. Rylan felt warmth rise in his chest. Dragons respected strength, size, and fire. But Seraphira respected something else, his courage and his mind. Her voice softened in a way he didn't hear with anyone else. For a moment, the silent wind blew between them, and Rylan realized something. The Queen was opening a space around him that she didn't open for others. A quiet space. A gentle one. That was the beginning of the unseen bond. Over the next few weeks, Rylan and Seraphira spent more time together. Not on purpose at first. Just happened. They talked while he worked on machines. They walked along high ridges where dragons rarely went. They shared stories about their worlds, hers full of ancient storms and thundering wings, his full of small cities and warm lights at night. One day Seraphira asked something different. Rylan, she said softly, do humans choose partners for strength? He blinked, surprised. Sometimes. But mostly for understanding. Trust. Friendship. Friendship, she repeated, tasting the word as if it were strange. Dragons choose partners for lineage. For power. For keeping the kingdom strong. Do you want that? He asked carefully. She didn't answer at first. She walked slowly to the cliff's edge and looked down at the sea of clouds. For a dragon, showing doubt was unusual. Power keeps a kingdom alive, she said, but it does not make a life worth living. Rylan stood beside her in silence. The wind brushed his hair. Her massive wing cast a shadow over him like a protective shield. Is that why you visit me? He asked quietly. Seraphira turned her head toward him as the sun lit her silver scales. Her eyes softened, glowing with a faint warmth that dragons rarely showed. I visit you because you see things differently, she said. You look at broken things and believe they can be whole again. She paused. Including me. Rylan's breath caught. He hadn't known the Queen could feel lonely. But dragons were not machines. He couldn't fix her heart with tools. He could only offer his presence, his honesty, and the quiet understanding she seemed to crave. The bond grew even deeper when a storm hit the mountains. A violent energy wave from the planet's core shook the sky, disabling many ancient structures. Dragons panicked, rushing to secure the egg vaults and the high nests. Rylan jumped into action, fixing old power grids and guiding young dragons to safety using simple tools. Seraphira watched him move through chaos with calm determination. He was small but he commanded attention. He was fragile but he refused to hide. When the final grid stabilized and the storm cleared, the Queen stepped close to him in front of everyone. Her voice carried across the cliffs. You have saved more today than any warrior. Rylan shook his head. I only did what I could. Seraphira lowered her massive head until her forehead touched his. Just a moment, just a breath. Dragons gasped. That gesture was sacred. Meant trust. Deep trust. A bond stronger than the council had ever seen. Rylan didn't know what to say. He gently placed his hand on her snout. I'm glad I was here, he whispered. The Queen closed her eyes for a moment. Her voice lowered, almost soft enough to break. You were meant to be here. From that moment, the kingdom's whispers changed. They were no longer whispers of confusion, but of fear. Fear that something powerful was forming between the Queen and the human. Something the council didn't understand. But no one could deny it. A connection had formed. A bond unseen but unmistakable. A human's heart and a dragon queen's soul had begun to move toward each other. And the future of Vorinth shifted quietly, like the first crack of a new dawn. A sharp wind moved across the broken valley, carrying dust, broken leaves, and the soft sound of something new. Leora felt it before she understood it. A strange warmth spread in her chest, like something inside her was waking up. She stood beside Arion, the human engineer, who was checking the damaged dragon core with shaking hands. The sky above them was dark red from the storm. Every shadow looked alive. Every sound felt dangerous. Yet Leora's mind stayed stuck on one feeling. Something inside her was changing. Arion noticed her long silence and turned to her. Are you all right? He asked. Leora tried to answer, but her voice came out soft and breathless. I don't know. Arion stepped closer. The stormlight reflected on his face, showing worry. He reached to check the small glowing marks on her wrist. They had appeared yesterday, faint like dust. Now they burned brighter. This is not normal dragon energy, Arion whispered. This is something else. Before either of them could say more, the ancient ruins around them trembled. Leora felt a pulse, like a heartbeat, but it didn't come from her. It came from the ground below. Arion stepped back fast. Something is under us. The ground cracked, a bright blue line shooting outward like lightning. The broken pillars shook. The air thickened with energy that felt wild and alive. Leora froze, every part of her body alert, but the warmth inside her grew stronger. The ground split open. A burst of glowing mist escaped, and from that mist rose a crystal sphere the size of a large egg. It hovered in the air, humming, shining, reacting to Leora's breathing. Arion whispered, "No way, that looks like a Genesis seed." Leora stared at the floating sphere. "What is that?" "Something dragons believed was impossible," Arion said. "A seed that forms only when two energies become one. Human energy. Dragon energy. Perfectly blended." Leora turned to him quickly. "But how? Why us?" Arion gave a nervous laugh. "I think the universe is bored and wants to surprise us." The sphere pulsed again. This time, it glowed in the same pattern as the marks on Leora's wrist. She felt a tug as if the sphere knew her. As if it had been waiting. The storm winds grew louder, whistling through the ruins. The sky cracked with blue lightning. Something above them roared, something far larger than any animal living on the valley floor. Arion grabbed Leora's arm. "We need to move. Now." But Leora stepped forward. The glowing sphere drifted close to her chest. It floated only a few inches away. She raised her hand slowly. The moment her fingers touched it, the entire valley flashed with white light. Arion covered his eyes. Leora. But inside the light, Leora felt no fear. She felt connection, like thousands of voices whispering, guiding, teaching. The warmth inside her chest spread through every part of her body. When the light faded, the valley became quiet again. Arion ran to her. "Are you hurt?" Leora shook her head. "No. I think I understand it now." Arion looked confused. "Understand what?" She lifted her hand. The marks on her wrist were no longer glowing, they were now carved like permanent lines, shining like quiet stars. And above her palm floated a tiny spark of blue energy, same as the seed's color. "This seed didn't just appear," Leora said softly. "It was born. And I think I helped create it." Arion blinked fast. "But dragons say this can only happen when the bond between two beings becomes stronger than their fear." Leora looked at him, eyes soft. "Maybe it did." Before the moment could settle, the roar above them returned, louder and closer. The ground shook again. Dust rained from the ruined stones. Arion pulled Leora behind a broken pillar. A giant shadow crossed the sky. Wings the size of ships spread across the storm clouds. Scales shimmered like molten metal. Its eyes burned like two suns. Arion whispered, "That's an ancient dragon. They only awaken when something breaks the laws of nature." Leora stared at the creature as it circled them. "It's here for the seed." The seed spark still hovered quietly above her hand. It pulsed with soft life, fragile, new, impossible. The ancient dragon's roar shook the air as it descended lower. Arion looked at her with a steady, brave expression. "If that thing wants a fight, then we run. We protect the seed. We stay alive." Leora nodded. But her chest tightened with fear. "Arion, that dragon is powerful. It will destroy everything to get this." "We won't let it," Arion said. "Because we didn't find something impossible. We made it." The ancient dragon swooped down, wings slicing through the storm wind. Its roar echoed across the valley, shaking stones loose. Arion grabbed Leora's hand and they ran, the seed glowing like a small star beside them. The impossible had been born. And now everything wanted it. The sun rose slowly over the peaks of Vorinth, casting a golden glow across the dragon kingdom. Clouds drifted between the cliffs, and the air smelled of smoke and snow. On a high platform carved from stone, Leora stretched her massive wings, feeling the strength that had grown inside her since the birth of the seed. The small blue spark that had formed in the valley months ago had grown, shaping itself into two tiny lives, non-identical twins, one more dragon-like, the other more human-like. Arion stood nearby, watching her with quiet pride. The humans who had doubted his abilities would never believe the sight before him. Two children hovered above the platform, their small wings flapping carefully. Kale, the dragon-like child, had scales that glittered in the sunlight. His eyes were sharp and golden, and every movement radiated strength. Luna, the human-like twin, had soft white hair and smaller, delicate wings, but her bright blue eyes glowed with energy that matched the seed itself. The dragons around them were silent. Many had once mocked the queen for ever speaking to a human. Many had whispered that no child could ever come of such an impossible union. Now all those whispers had died. Instead, the kingdom watched with awe and a hint of fear. Kale landed lightly on the stone platform, nudging Luna gently. She looked up at her mother and father, a small smile spreading across her face. Leora lowered her massive head and spoke in a calm, proud voice. You are the future of this kingdom. You are proof that strength comes not just from size or fire, but from courage, heart, and wisdom. Arion stepped forward. They are perfect, he said simply. Stronger than we imagined. Smarter than anyone predicted. And they are ours to guide. The dragons murmured among themselves. Seraphira, the queen, had never been so still. She had led for centuries, yet the arrival of these twins shifted everything. Kale and Luna represented a new kind of power, one that combined human cleverness and dragon strength. Kale stretched his wings again, feeling the power in every beat. Fire sparked faintly in his throat, hotter and brighter than any dragon's fire the kingdom had seen. Luna lifted a hand, and a soft glow of energy drifted from her fingers, bending light in the air like a living ribbon. Even the oldest dragons who had survived centuries stared in disbelief. The twins were not just children, they were symbols. They showed the dragons that humans, small and underestimated, could create possibilities that even the most ancient beings could not predict. The Council of Elder Dragons stepped forward, bowing slightly in respect to both the queen and the human who had changed the course of their history. Arion looked at the council and spoke firmly. Do not underestimate humans. They are clever, patient, and brave. They may be small, but their minds can change the world. A hush fell over the dragons. Many had mocked humans before, calling them weak and foolish. Now they realized that the truth was different. Humans could solve problems in ways dragons could not imagine. They could act with patience, intelligence, and creativity that rivaled the greatest dragon minds. Leora lowered her wings, folding them carefully around the twins. She looked at Arion, eyes soft with gratitude. You have not just helped me, she said. You have helped all of us. You have proven that humans are more than we believed. They are worthy allies, and now they are part of this kingdom. Arion nodded, feeling a quiet pride that had nothing to do with glory. He had not sought recognition. He had only done what he could, acting with intelligence, patience, and courage. Yet the kingdom now recognized the truth of his efforts. Humans could make a difference even among dragons. The twins began to explore the platform, testing their wings. Kale swooped in arcs through the air, fire trailing softly behind him. Luna floated carefully, bending light around her to create tiny glowing patterns. The dragons watched in amazement. Even the youngest hatchlings stared in awe, dreaming of what might be possible in the future. The queen spoke again, her voice carrying across the cliffs. The world changes with every choice we make. Today you see proof that courage, cleverness, and heart can overcome even the impossible. Humans are not just allies, they are innovators, problem solvers, and protectors. Their strength may not be in size, but it is in the mind and spirit. Never forget that. A strong wind swept across the platform, lifting dust, leaves, and small pieces of stone. The twins laughed as they felt the air beneath their wings. Leora and Arion watched them, hearts full. They had survived storms, doubts, and impossibilities. And now, the future of the kingdom was secure in the hands of these hybrid heirs, children who carried the best of dragons and humans together. In the distance, dragons began to fly in formation, circling the platform. They roared in unison, a sound that echoed across the mountains. It was not a roar of fear or anger, but a roar of respect, acknowledgement, and awe. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a human's cleverness, a dragon's wisdom, and the impossible made real through love, patience, and courage. Arion looked at Leora and she nodded. Together they had changed the kingdom forever. Not through force, not through fear, but through ingenuity, understanding, and quiet bravery. The twins were a living reminder of that truth. Kale flapped his wings higher and Luna followed. They danced together in the sky, leaving trails of fire and light. The dragons below watched silently, understanding that this was more than play. This was the rise of a new generation, one that would unite the strengths of humans and dragons in ways no one had ever imagined. The sun climbed higher, lighting the floating clouds and rocky peaks. The kingdom was alive with possibility. Humans had shown their edge, not through weapons, not through numbers, but through cleverness, heart, and the courage to act when no one else would. And in the skies above Vorinth, the hybrid heirs soared freely, carrying the promise of a future where dragons and humans could achieve greatness together. As the day ended, the queen, the twins, and Arion stood atop the highest cliff. They looked out at the horizon where the sun met the clouds. Every dragon present understood what had changed. The age of underestimating humans was over. Humans had an edge that was quiet but unstoppable, the edge of ingenuity, bravery, and unwavering determination. And so, the Dragon Queen's laughter at what was once impossible became a memory. Now the kingdom knew a truth they could not ignore: humans could change the world, one brave act at a time. The twins glowed in the sunlight, a living symbol of that truth, as the skies above Vorinth filled with the sounds of dragons and humans together, united by ingenuity, courage, and hope. The impossible had been born, and it would shape the kingdom for generations.